What if, on an ordinary night, you walked into a store and saw a small child clutching a pack of diapers, alone and afraid, scanning the aisles as if she carried the weight of the world on her tiny shoulders? Would you stop? Would you ask if she needed help? Or would you assume someone else would step in? That was the choice Keanu Reeves faced when he spotted Lila, a 5-year-old girl on a desperate mission to care for her baby brother, with no adult in sight. What started as a quiet moment of concern spiraled into a harrowing discovery of neglect, addiction, and survival. As Keanu followed the breadcrumbs of her heartbreaking reality, he realized that one decision, one moment of kindness, had the power to change everything. But could he truly make a difference? And how far would he go to protect the innocent? Join us in reflecting on this true story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for more daily stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you are watching. For we would love to hear from you. Keanu Reeves was used to anonymity in everyday settings whenever possible. But that particular evening felt different the moment he stepped inside the bustling Walmart. Amid the flurry of shoppers under fluorescent lights, his attention was drawn to a solitary figure. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, stood in an aisle with a package of diapers clutched in her small hands. She wore sneakers a size too large and a faded t-shirt that hung loosely over her skinny frame. There was a look of fierce determination on her face, along with an unmistakable hint of desperation. Curiosity and concern sparked inside Keanu. Something about the scene felt off, even from a distance. He discreetly watched as she paced, eyes darting across the store and toward the exit. She had a timid posture, as if fearful that any adult might question what she was doing. Every so often, she paused to tighten her hold on the diapers, as though she believed someone would snatch them away. Keanu took a gentle step forward, deciding it was best to speak with her. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle the child. When she finally looked up, her wide eyes flickered with recognition, perhaps not of his fame, but of the fact that someone was paying close attention to her. "Are you here alone?" Keanu asked quietly, kneeling so their eyes met at the same level. The girl swallowed hard, clutching the package close to her chest. "My name is Lila," she said, voice quivering. "I'm looking for diapers for my baby brother, June." Keanu's heart tightened. A child her age should never have to worry about such things alone. Before he could speak again, a store employee who had been monitoring the aisle approached. "Sir," the employee said gently, "is everything all right? We noticed she's unaccompanied." Lila's eyes brimmed with tears. "Please don't take me away. I just need these for June." Keanu introduced himself, calmly explaining that he wanted to help, not accuse her of wrongdoing. The employee, visibly relieved, agreed to step back and allow Keanu to find out where her family was. Moments later, Keanu managed to coax Lila into sharing more details. Between shaky breaths, she mentioned that her mother, Catherine Holson, had not come home for a while and that she'd been instructed by someone named Dennis to handle errands. Confusion and alarm rose in Keanu's chest. The story indicated a much bigger problem than a simple trip to the store. Eventually, local law enforcement was contacted, concerned by the possibility of neglect. The officers arrived and gently questioned Lila. Keanu remained by her side, providing reassurance. He learned that Lila had an 18-month-old baby brother named June waiting somewhere. The immediate question was how a girl so young had managed to reach the store on her own. Lila described walking several blocks in near darkness, heart pounding in fear, determined to buy diapers because no one else seemed to be caring for June. As the police guided Lila outside to a squad car, Keanu's protective instinct flared. He requested permission to accompany them, which the officers granted, recognizing both his concern and the desperate circumstances. Together, they rode to the address Lila provided, a rundown building in an impoverished part of town. The place was eerily quiet when they arrived. Inside, the stale air smelled of old takeout and neglect. Broken furniture was scattered around, and the flickering overhead light illuminated chipped walls. In a dim corner, little June was crying in his crib. Keanu's heart broke at the sight. The boy's cheeks were damp with tears, and his diaper was indeed far too small. Lila rushed over, diaper pack in hand, as if proud she had nearly completed her mission. It didn't take long for authorities to determine that both children required immediate protective care. A quick search revealed no one else present to claim responsibility. However, just as they were about to depart, the door banged open. A woman with braided hair, later confirmed to be Catherine Holson, stumbled in alongside a tall man with shoulder-length blonde hair. This man was likely Dennis. Their surprise turned to anger when they found police inside. Accusations and frantic questions erupted. The sight of the two disheveled adults only deepened Keanu's concern. Within minutes, more officers arrived, separating Catherine and Dennis from the children. The tension in the tiny apartment soared. Keanu stood protectively near Lila and June, who both trembled in confusion and fear. He exchanged a look with one of the officers that silently asked, "What now?" That was how Keanu Reeves ended up in a police cruiser that night, following two separate vehicles carrying a bewildered mother and her boyfriend, as well as two terrified children who had been left alone far too long. Under the glare of streetlights, he hoped with every part of his being that whatever came next would lead to a safer life for Lila and June. Flashing red and blue lights reflected off the polished floors of the local police station as Keanu stepped into the lobby. The harsh overhead lamps buzzed and cast shadows across weary faces waiting behind a tall reception desk. It was well past midnight, and everything about the space, its echoing hallways, the faint smell of disinfectant, spoke of seriousness. Ahead, Keanu glimpsed two groups of officers. One group escorted Catherine and Dennis, both looking disoriented and irritated, toward an area where detainees were typically booked. The second group guided the two small children, Lila and June, down a quieter hallway. He overheard an officer mention a child welfare worker. Keanu's decision was immediate. He followed the children, walking briskly along the corridor. Keanu's gaze kept flicking to the other end of the station, where Catherine and Dennis were processed under glaring fluorescent lights. The procedure was methodical. Digital fingerprints, mugshots, forms, and questions about addresses and personal information. Their frustration was evident, but the officers maintained decorum, calmly reminding them of their rights. Eventually, Keanu found himself in a softly lit room where a woman with kind eyes waited. She introduced herself as Rachel Nenes, a child welfare specialist. Her demeanor struck a perfect balance of empathy and authority as she welcomed Lila and June, asking them gentle questions about their home life. She quickly learned their ages, 5 for Lila, 18 months for June, and their immediate needs, diaper changes, some food, and a comforting presence. While Rachel and an assistant busied themselves with the children, Keanu stood nearby, absorbing the strangeness of the situation. Hours ago, he'd been an onlooker at a Walmart, prepared for a quick visit. Now he found himself deeply entangled in the future of two vulnerable kids. "I appreciate you being here, Mr. Reeves," Rachel said quietly as she stepped aside to confer with him. "It's not common for a stranger to take such an interest in a case like this, but I can see it's genuine." Keanu nodded, hands in the pockets of his jacket. "I just couldn't walk away," he admitted. Lila was alone, buying diapers. It felt wrong not to help. Rachel smiled politely, then turned her focus to the children. Lying on a small couch, Lila wrapped her arms protectively around her brother, who dozed on her lap. The scene was heartbreaking. Lila was too young to carry such weight. Looking at her, Keanu felt a surge of protectiveness. Soon, Rachel asked Lila to describe life at home. In a tiny voice, the girl recounted nights when her mother disappeared, sometimes returning with men other than Dennis. She spoke of hunger, of June crying inconsolably for hours, and of Dennis teaching her to walk down certain streets to reach the Walmart. Rachel's pen darted across her notepad, capturing every detail. Keanu listened in stunned silence. The revelations of adult responsibilities thrust upon such a young child were unsettling. Memories flashed through his mind. The store's bright aisles, Lila's trembling grip on the diapers. Even that small act carried a burden no 5-year-old should bear. After a while, Rachel gently inquired if either child had been physically harmed. Lila's brow furrowed, and she confessed she'd never been hit, but she and June had endured long stretches of neglect. "Mommy doesn't smile anymore," she whispered. "She's sad and angry a lot. Dennis, he does things, and Mommy doesn't stop him." A tension in the room thickened. Keanu's stomach churned at the implied abuse. Rachel pressed further, but softly. When Lila admitted that she sometimes stayed awake all night from fear, Keanu had to glance away to steady himself. The heartbreak was raw. Eventually, Rachel ended the questioning for the moment. Sensing Lila's exhaustion, the child welfare worker explained the next steps. The children would be placed in emergency foster care or a suitable temporary shelter until a court could review Catherine's situation. She assured Lila that she and June would stay together. Nonetheless, the mention of being separated from their mother elicited trembling lips and anxious eyes. Lila turned to Keanu then, a desperate look shining through her exhaustion. "Can we stay with you?" she asked, voice trembling. "Please, I don't want June and me to be alone." Keanu's throat constricted. He kneeled to meet her eye level. "I wish it were that simple." He began gently, "But there are rules to make sure you're placed somewhere that can take good care of you right away." She sniffled, wiping at a tear. "Will you still come see us?" "I promise," Keanu said firmly, giving her small hand a reassuring squeeze. They were interrupted by an officer stepping in, letting Rachel know that Catherine and Dennis had been officially booked. The mention of the mother caused Lila to look up, hope flickering across her features. But the reality of the arrest was sobering. Catherine was in trouble, and the children couldn't go home with her tonight, or perhaps any time soon. Rachel turned back to Lila. "We'll arrange to see your mom. For now, I need to take you and your brother somewhere safe." As the group moved to finalize paperwork, Keanu lingered, heart heavy but resolve firm. He spotted a clock on the wall, 2 a.m. The night was still unfolding, and with it, a tangled crisis that would test everyone's resolve, especially a young mother, her neglected children, and one actor who never expected to become their advocate. The clock on the wall of the child welfare office ticked relentlessly toward dawn, each second adding a layer of urgency to the situation. Keanu sat on a couch. Lila curled up beside him with her head resting on his arm. June dozed in a borrowed crib, oblivious to the adult conversations swirling around him. Rachel was on the phone, coordinating with a local emergency shelter when she noticed Keanu's anxious expression. She stepped aside, phone cradled against her shoulder. "Mr. Reeves? I'm trying to find a placement that can take them right now," she explained, compassion evident in her voice. "We have a few options, but everything's stretched thin." An idea occurred to Keanu then. He recalled Sunnybrook Children's Home, a private facility just outside the city. He'd donated to them in the past because they provided outstanding, specialized care. "What about Sunnybrook?" he asked quietly. "I know the director, Ethan. He's dedicated and has resources that might help." Rachel's eyes lit up in recognition. "Yes, I've heard good things. If you have a direct contact there, it might speed up the process." Keanu wasted no time making a phone call. Soon, Ethan was on the line, sounding sleep-roughened but concerned. Within minutes, Rachel confirmed they could place Lila and June at Sunnybrook temporarily. Given the hour and how exhausted the children were, the arrangement felt like a small blessing. Moments later, an officer knocked on the door, motioning for Keanu. Outside in the hallway, the detective who had booked Catherine addressed him solemnly. "We've just processed the mother. She'll be charged with neglect pending further investigation. The boyfriend, Dennis, faces possible charges related to controlled substances. We found paraphernalia at their apartment. Are you aware if Catherine had any involvement?" Keanu hesitated, remembering Lila's uncertain mentions of her mother's absence and Dennis's troubling influence. "I'm still learning the details. But from what I've seen, Catherine's struggling. She might be complicit, or she might just be overwhelmed. The kids need help, one way or another." The detective nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll keep you updated." Returning to the softly lit office, Keanu caught the tail end of Lila's conversation with Rachel about her favorite teddy bear. The child's eyes brimmed with tears as she confessed she'd left it at home in the rush to go to Walmart. "I can't sleep without my teddy," she whispered, looking at Keanu pleadingly. His heart twisted. A teddy bear might seem small in the face of bigger problems, but to a child, it could represent a final anchor to any sense of normalcy. "I'll do what I can to get it for you," he promised, ruffling Lila's hair gently. Before they left, Lila was given the chance to see her mother from behind a one-way window. Catherine, still in handcuffs, looked drained. The brief glimpse only deepened the heartbreak. Mother and daughter, separated by glass and circumstance. The child pressed her small hands to the window, whispering a muffled, "Mommy?" that Catherine couldn't properly hear. Tears rolled down Catherine's cheeks as she lifted her shackled hands in a futile attempt to comfort Lila from a distance. "Time's up," the officer murmured, ushering Lila away. The solemnity of that moment weighed heavily on Keanu's mind as he scooped June into his arms, following Rachel and Lila out to his car. If there was any silver lining, it was that Sunnybrook Children's Home awaited them, a place that could provide the care these kids so desperately needed. The drive to Sunnybrook was long and silent, dawn's early light painting the sky in pale pinks and oranges. Keanu could feel the children's exhaustion. Lila, drowsy but defiant, struggled to keep her eyes open. Her little brother, strapped snugly into a borrowed car seat, slept fitfully, occasionally whimpering. Rachel dozed off against the passenger seat window, drained by the night's emotional toll. When they arrived, Ethan stood at the front door of the large Victorian home, his salt and pepper hair tousled from having woken so early. "Keanu," he greeted, relief and concern mingling in his voice. "You weren't kidding when you said it was urgent." Keanu nodded, stepping out into the crisp morning air. He gently helped Lila unbuckle her seatbelt. She blinked at Ethan, her expression a mixture of curiosity and fatigue. "We'll take good care of you," Ethan promised softly. "Come on inside. We have a cozy bed for each of you, and breakfast will be ready soon." Inside, the foyer felt warm and welcoming. The polished wood floors and soft lighting contrasted with the institutional vibe of the police station. Painted murals of flowers and landscapes adorned the walls, likely done by the children who lived here. The gentle hum of quiet conversation came from an adjacent kitchen. A staff member with kind eyes guided Lila and June toward a small bedroom where two beds waited, side by side. Keanu lingered, observing the comforting surroundings. He'd always known Sunnybrook ran a tight ship, structured but compassionate. Rachel began filling out intake forms, while Ethan oversaw the children's immediate needs. A few minutes later, Keanu checked in on Lila, who was already lying beneath a pastel quilt. Her eyes grew wide with fresh worry. "What about Mommy? And my teddy bear?" she asked in a trembling voice. Keanu crouched beside the bed. "The police are still searching your apartment. They know to look for your teddy. I promised I'd bring it, and I will." She considered his words for a moment, then closed her eyes, unable to fight exhaustion any longer. As Lila drifted off, her small hand clenched the edge of the blanket. June was already asleep in the adjacent bed. The sight of them, safe for the moment, calmed Keanu's own racing thoughts. Pulling Rachel aside, he whispered, "I want to check on Catherine at the station, or wherever they might take her next. Can you stay a while?" Rachel nodded. "Of course. The children are our top priority right now. You go see what's going on with their mother." With a heavy heart, Keanu made his way to the door. Sunlight was creeping higher in the sky, the promise of a new day overshadowed by the formidable challenges ahead. Yet, a spark of determination fueled him. He had given Lila his word, and he intended to keep it, even if that meant facing uncomfortable truths about Catherine's life and the chaos into which these children had been thrown. By the time Keanu reached the police station again, the morning rush was in full swing. His conversation with the detective revealed a critical update. Catherine Holson had suffered a medical crisis, an apparent seizure followed by a heart attack, while in custody. She'd been rushed to Memorial Hospital's intensive care unit. Fear and concern coursed through him. He found himself weaving through traffic, mentally preparing for the worst. Catherine was a stranger by most definitions, yet her children had wrapped themselves around his heart. If she didn't pull through, he couldn't begin to imagine how Lila and June would cope. At the hospital, he navigated sterile corridors until a nurse guided him to the ICU. Two officers stood outside a glass-walled room, monitoring the patient within. Keanu noticed the beep and hiss of medical equipment, the drawn blinds, and Catherine lying pale under fluorescent lights. Dr. Patel, a cardiologist, approached with brisk footsteps. "Mr. Reeves, I presume?" Dr. Patel asked, scanning a clipboard. Catherine was under a great deal of stress that led to a catastrophic event affecting her heart. "We've performed an emergency procedure. She's stable, but the next 48 hours are critical." Keanu offered to cover any medical costs, understanding that Catherine's resources were likely minimal. The officers, though present to ensure she remained in custody, stepped aside to let him enter. Catherine's eyes fluttered open when he quietly approached her bedside. "Where are my children?" she croaked, voice raspy from the oxygen tube. "They're safe." Keanu reassured her gently. "They're at Sunnybrook Children's Home right now. They have food, beds, and people to look after them." Her eyes welled with tears, a mixture of relief and sorrow. After a moment, she managed to whisper, "Thank you for helping them." Keanu saw how fragile she was, emotionally, physically, cuffed by the wrist to the hospital bed. Catherine looked more broken than defiant. "Focus on getting better," he urged. "We'll work out details about Lila and June once you recover." Her grip on his hand tightened. "Please, you have to believe I never wanted this. My life just crumbled." A cascade of words spilled out. Her heartbreak after losing her husband, Gerald, in a tragic accident. He had worked at an animal conservation center, and he died in a crash off a bridge. Debts emerged, one after another, from loans to pay for bills that only multiplied. Suddenly alone, with two children, Catherine had fallen into desperation. Then came Dennis, who introduced her to drugs. Little by little, her resolve withered. She explained the nights she spent dancing at a club to keep food on the table, eventually succumbing to the cycle of addiction. "I know it doesn't excuse what I did, leaving Lila to fend for June," she said through tears. "I don't blame anyone for thinking I failed." Keanu gently smoothed the edge of the thin hospital blanket. "It sounds like you went through a nightmare, but you're still here. You can still try to do right by your kids." Catherine's tears kept flowing, but this time there was a hint of steel in her expression. "If I get another chance," she choked, "I want to be the mother they deserve. I want to honor Gerald's memory." Keanu nodded, heart heavy but hopeful. Before he could speak further, a nurse stepped in to adjust Catherine's floor. The doctor signaled Keanu to step outside, explaining that Catherine needed rest. In the hallway, Dr. Patel reiterated her precarious condition. "Stress won't help her recover. Once she stabilizes, she may face more procedures. You should prepare yourself for a long road." Keanu thanked him, stepping away for a moment to gather himself. His phone buzzed, a call from the same detective as before. The news took him by surprise. The teddy bear had been recovered from Catherine's apartment, and the forensics team discovered concealed packets of white powder inside it. Worse yet, the preliminary test confirmed it was a controlled substance, likely hidden there for distribution. A knot formed in Keanu's stomach. He realized the significance of this discovery. Catherine's predicament might be far more serious. Or perhaps Dennis was the one truly at fault. Either way, it complicated everything. He headed straight back to the station to meet the detective in a small conference room. The detective showed him the clear evidence bag. Inside was the teddy bear, matted fur and all, stained from attempts to force the fabric open. "We'll test for prints," the detective said, grim-faced. "But if Catherine's are on there..." Keanu swallowed hard. "Lila loves that bear," he murmured, thinking of her anxious face. She had no idea. "It's gut-wrenching," the detective agreed. "But we have to follow protocol." Then he lowered his voice. The good news is we suspect Dennis's prints will be everywhere. If Catherine never handled the bear, that might strengthen her defense. Leaving the station once more, Keanu felt a strange swirl of relief and dread. He had to update Catherine's medical team and Rachel about this new finding. In a single day, he had stumbled into a complicated web of addiction, heartbreak, and criminal activity. The only constant was his commitment to two innocent children who deserved far more than what life had dealt them. Keanu arrived back at Sunnybrook Children's Home under the bright noonday sun. The Victorian building stood proudly against a backdrop of rolling lawns, its windows glinting like eyes that had seen their share of stories, some sad, some hopeful. Rachel was waiting on the porch, arms folded, her face etched with concern. "How's their mother?" she asked the moment Keanu stepped out of his car. "In recovery. She's stable for now, but it was serious," he replied. "She wants to do right by the kids, but it's complicated. And there's more." He explained a revelation about the teddy bear and possible drug stashes. Rachel's eyes widened, though she wasn't entirely surprised. Often, these cases revealed layers of exploitation and abuse by manipulative partners. Inside, Lila and June were in a playroom decorated with colorful murals. The older child's eyes lit up when she spotted Keanu, but there was a tension in her posture that betrayed her anxieties. She led her little brother by the hand, heading straight for Keanu. "Did you find Teddy?" Lila's voice trembled with cautious hope. "I'm worried he's scared." Keanu knelt, resting a hand on her shoulder. "The police have Teddy right now. He got a little dirty, but they'll clean him and check something important," he said gently, unsure how much detail to give a 5-year-old. She frowned, glancing at June. "But can Mommy come here? We want to see her." Rachel, who stood nearby, cleared her throat. "Your mom is very sick, Lila. She needs to stay in the hospital for a while. But guess what? When she's feeling better, we'll arrange visits." Lila's lips quivered. Still, she nodded, determined to be strong. Keanu felt an overwhelming mix of admiration and sorrow for this child who had been forced to grow up too fast. In the following days, news arrived that the fingerprint analysis confirmed Dennis's prints were all over the hidden drug packets. Catherine's prints were nowhere to be found on the contraband, which drastically shifted the narrative in her favor. After regaining enough strength to speak, Catherine repeated to investigators what she had told Keanu. She hadn't touched that teddy bear in a long time because it reminded her too painfully of Gerald, her late husband. Realizing that Catherine might have been more victim than perpetrator, the authorities began considering lesser charges or mandatory rehabilitation instead of severe legal consequences. Meanwhile, Keanu took it upon himself to help Catherine secure a spot in a reputable residential treatment center. It specialized in women with young children, providing therapy, parenting classes, and drug rehab. When Catherine was well enough to see Lila and June again, Keanu and Rachel brought them to the hospital. The reunion, though brief and supervised, was emotional. Lila rushed into her mother's arms, tears streaming down her cheeks. June, too young to understand everything, simply babbled happily at the familiarity of his mother's scent. Catherine wept openly, promising both children she would work hard to become a better mom. As the discharge date approached, Dr. Patel cleared Catherine for transfer to a rehab facility. Keanu stepped in to finalize the paperwork, meeting with social workers and legal representatives. It was decided that Lila and June would remain at Sunnybrook for a short time longer, allowing Catherine to focus on her own treatment. If she showed progress, they could be reunited in a carefully supervised arrangement. On the afternoon Catherine was moved, Keanu visited her hospital room one last time. She was no longer wearing handcuffs, though an officer stood outside. She managed a small smile. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, voice trembling. "You've given me a shot at not losing my kids forever." Keanu shook his head. "You're the one who has to do the hard work, Catherine. I can open doors, but you have to walk through them. Every day, you'll have to choose your children over whatever pain or cravings you face." She nodded, eyes resolute. "I'm ready." After signing the final documents, He left Catherine in the care of the rehab facility staff and drove back to Sunnybrook. The corridors there had become familiar, a place where laughter mixed with tears, and children learned to trust again. Lila and June greeted him at the doorway of their shared room, each with bright eyes and carefully combed hair. "Is Mommy okay?" Lila asked immediately, scanning his face as if searching for hidden truths. "She's in a place to get better," he said with a gentle smile. "And guess what? The detective gave me this." From behind his back, he produced a teddy bear, now cleaned and patched. Lila let out a small gasp of joy, hugging the worn plush to her chest. No contraband remained, and any reminder of Dennis's manipulations had been removed. To Lila, it was just the beloved toy that tied her to the memory of the father she had lost too soon. In that moment, the future didn't look easy, but it looked possible. Lila and June had a safe place to sleep. Catherine had a path toward healing. And Keanu, unexpectedly, had found new purpose in championing a family on the brink of collapse. Sometimes life truly did place us exactly where we needed to be, no matter how random or inconvenient it seemed. In the aftermath of a single, unplanned encounter at a Walmart, an entire family's trajectory began shifting away from isolation, addiction, and potential tragedy. What started as a routine errand became a lifeline for Lila and June, whose innocent resilience shone amidst neglect. Keanu Reeves, stepping into a role beyond his usual public image, offered more than superficial aid. He became a stabilizing force determined to navigate them toward hope. Catherine Holson's journey, from the brink of losing her children to a genuine chance at rehabilitation, underscored the powerful impact of empathy and second chances. Revealing her past, her lost husband Gerald, financial ruin, the downward spiral into drugs, she stood at a crossroads where accountability met opportunity. The critical discovery that the teddy bear's hidden contraband bore Dennis's fingerprints highlighted Catherine's victimization. Legal challenges remained, but with supportive services, therapy, and vigilant care, she found a genuine path forward. Meanwhile, Lila and June experienced security for the first time in ages, learning to trust adult figures like Rachel, Ethan, and Keanu. Their future became tied to a system of support designed to nurture rather than punish. Through it all, the delicate process of mending broken bonds began taking shape. Every player, law enforcement, child welfare, healthcare professionals, contributed to a broader chain of compassion. The lesson resonated. It takes more than luck to rewrite a life story. It takes mindful, committed action. And sometimes, a single person's decision to get involved can alter the fate of a family forever.